Hi, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join me on this week's video. On this week's video, we're beginning a brand new series entitled The New Era Face-to-Face Evaluation. And I'm sure this is going to be a fascinating discussion for you. Now, before we get into any of the topics of today's discussion, let me just explain the philosophy of this program. Anytime I put together a new series for you, there's a delicate tightrope and a delicate balance that has to be achieved. On the one hand, I strive to bring you topics and information that are current and relevant and up to the minute relevant in the workers' compensation system. And at the same time, I try to provide a broad spectrum of topics for you that will have long-term application. At least that is until there's a new case law or new developments in the system that render that principle obsolete. So we try to bring you information that's current, that's relevant, and up to the minute current, but also that you can use and that you can rely on at least for a year or 2 years or until some new development causes us to bring you updates and changes. Well, with today's discussion, the New Era Face-to-Face Evaluation, I'm going to be providing information for you that is up to the minute current. I mean up to the minute, up to the day current. I'm going to be sharing with you information that is developing even as we speak on a day-by-day basis. And because of the delicate nature and the rapidly changing nature of this information, it's possible that this information could be obsolete even tomorrow. In fact, I'm amazed that what we're going to talk about today has gone on as long as it has, but it apparently, the situations and circumstances that we'll be discussing are currently persisting, and we have no way of knowing how long they will persist. In fact, they could be terminated as soon as tomorrow. But I'm presenting this information to you because of the environment that we're in now and the relevance of this information to the environment as it exists today. If there are some changes that take place over the next days, weeks, and months in this information will become quickly obsolete, and I'll take it down and update it as necessary based upon those changes. So what I want to talk to you about today in this program, this new series entitled The New Era Face-to-Face Evaluation, is how to change your QME evaluation from the way that you've typically been doing it over the past months and years, and probably dating back to your inception as a qualified medical evaluator. It seems that the Division of Workers' Compensation's new interpretation of the complexity factors under 9795 has now taken full effect and is gripping QMEs by the throat and is causing QMEs to look at their QME credential and their QME work newly. In fact, I just got a call from a qualified medical evaluator just 2 days ago. And this is typical of the calls that I've been getting recently, but apparently this particular qualified medical evaluator just had his first brush with the DWC's new interpretation of the complexity factors, and this QME was lamenting to me about the hours and hours and hours that he spent in preparing his qualified medical evaluation, for which he now is only going to be allowed to bill an ML 102 level of complexity for his evaluation, whereas before he was able to bill an ML 104 level of complexity for his evaluation. So this doctor detailed the hours that he had involved in the case. He detailed the hours that his secretary had involved in the case, and he took all those hours, at least his own personal hours, and tallied those up and divided those by the reimbursement rate for the ML 102 report, which is $625, and he determined that he was making about $40 per hour for the evaluation. $40 per hour for the evaluation. And for this evaluation, he was devoting approximately 15 hours of time away from his clinical practice, his robust clinical practice, where his hourly rate is in the $200, $300, $400, and $500 per hour level, and also taking time away from his family on the weekends when he should be attending his daughter's soccer games, but he's at home on his computer punching out an ML102 report for which he's losing money. And that is the current situation that we're confronting. And so I'm getting calls from qualified medical evaluators on a daily basis who are telling me that they no longer are able to do the evaluations because it does not have the financial efficacy that it used to have. And doctors are doing one of two things. They're either terminating their QME status with the Division of Workers' Compensation, or they're declaring themselves to be unavailable, at least for 30-day periods until there's some change in the current situation. Well, my advice to these doctors and my advice to you is going to be contained within the topics of this program, the New Era Face-to-Face Evaluation. And my advice is that you can still do these evaluations. You can still find profit in these evaluations. There still is business efficacy in these evaluations, but, and here's the big but, the but is that everything you've known and everything that you've done and everything that you've adopted in your QME evaluations now has to change. It has to change dramatically because the reimbursements for our evaluations have been literally cut off at the knees. In fact, most reimbursements are coming in now at less than 60%. No, let me rephrase that. At greater than 60% reductions from our former customary billing rates under the ML104 level. So reimbursements on these evaluations have dramatically been whittled away. But if you can change, if you can adapt, if you can adopt some new procedures, if you can get your head on straight and focus on the issues involved with each evaluation and nothing more, focus simply on the issues and nothing more, then there still is some business efficacy in these evaluations. And as I said earlier, I fully expect the Division of Workers' Compensation's interpretation of the complexity factors to change here shortly because the matter is being heard in courts in Los Angeles. And so as this is being recorded, there's another hearing about to take place within 7 days. So this program could be obsoleted even in 7 days. But I wanted to get to you to give you some encouragement to continue doing the QME evaluations, but to do the evaluations under a new set of operating procedures. So in this program, we're going to cover every single aspect of the face-to-face evaluation. And what you're going to find is that every single aspect has to change. It has to get quicker. It has to get more focused. It has to be more targeted. It has to be more directed to the specific issues, and all fat, meaning all time, unrelated to the issues, all the fat has to be trimmed from these evaluations, or you will end up, just like the other qualified medical evaluators, losing money on these evaluations and spending precious weekend time on these evaluations for which you're not going to be reimbursed anything attractive. So in today's discussion, I want to begin with preliminary procedures. How to establish the complexity of your evaluation and how to set up the evaluation in the weeks before the evaluation so that you know exactly what it is that you're doing, so that when you get to the evaluation, you can get in, get out, get back to the office and get the report out and get done with the evaluation and move on with your life or move on with your next evaluation. In subsequent sessions, we're going to go over other aspects of the face-to-face evaluation, such as the history-taking process, such as obtaining the relevant medical history process, such as obtaining the social history, the occupational history. We have a session devoted specifically to the activities of daily living assessment, and we have a session specifically devoted to assessment of your examinee's credibility. What would it mean to your evaluation if you determined that your examinee was not credible? What if you could determine that in the first 5 minutes of the face-to-face evaluation? Could that impact the time involved in your face-to-face evaluation? Of course it could. So now more than ever before is examinee credibility a key component of your decision-making triage, so to speak, when it comes to the face-to-face evaluation. So for today's discussion, I've provided you a set of materials, a set of labor codes, and a couple of codes of regulation that we're going to be reviewing. So I'll give you a minute to go ahead and assemble those materials, and I look forward to being back with you here in just a few minutes as we begin our brand new series today entitled The New Era Face-to-Face Evaluation. So I'll be back with you here in just a very few moments. Okay, I'm back with you now and have my materials. I hope you have your materials as well. And let's begin today's discussion. And today we're talking about the new era of the face-to-face evaluation. And in today's discussion, I want you to imagine that you just received a call for a QME appointment. Maybe you've received a call from an injured worker. Maybe you've received a call from a claims administrator or the applicant attorney. Or maybe something's coming over on your fax machine and you realize that you're getting a call for a new QME appointment. Well, I want to talk about the procedures, the critical procedures that take place in the days and weeks prior to the face-to-face evaluation so that you can get to the face-to-face evaluation, get the evaluation done, get the report out, get paid, and still make money even in this difficult era where our reimbursements have been so drastically slashed by the Division of Workers' Compensation. Now, one of the most important principles to understand when you get a new call for a qualified medical evaluation is the type of evaluation that you're getting. And I find that this is an area that many qualified medical evaluators either are not familiar with or they've forgotten about. Now, I know that in training to become a qualified medical evaluator, some of the key labor codes that qualified medical evaluators are educated on have to do with the labor codes that govern the QME process under labor codes 4060, 4061, and 4062. Now, each of these labor codes describe a different type of QME evaluation. And basically, there's only 3 types. It may seem to you like you have an infinite variety of claims and cases coming your way, but in actuality, there's only 3 types of cases. And if you can accurately scope out and determine the type of case that you're getting, you can focus your evaluation onto the key issues involved with that particular type of case and get in, get out, and get it handled and leave everything else undone or unsaid because everything else is irrelevant to the evaluation. So let's go over these 3 labor codes. And I want you to know, many qualified medical evaluators don't know this. It's interesting. They either don't know it or they've forgotten it or They were never taught it? I'm not sure. So when one of the parties requests a qualified medical evaluation, either the examinee, either the claims administrator, either the defense attorney, or the applicant attorney order a qualified medical evaluation, they order that evaluation using two forms. They use either QME Form 105, which is right here, or they use QME Form 106, which is right here. Okay? Here's the forms. Now, for represented injured workers for injuries before 2005, this is the form to be used, QME Form 106. For injuries after 2005, again for represented injured workers, the form can only be completed online. There is no paper form. It can only be completed online. But the form online is quite similar to the form that applies to injuries before 2005. So we'll use this as a representation of the forms used for represented injured workers. Okay? So in filling out this form, let's say an applicant attorney is filling out this form to request a qualified medical evaluation for his client, an injured worker. There's a series of boxes here at the top of the form, right here, right across here. I don't know if you can see those check boxes. It allows the requester of the evaluation to select the labor code under which the evaluation is going to be ordered. So there's a box here for labor code 4060. There's a box here for labor code 4061. And there's a box over here for labor code 4062. Now, labor code 4060 describes the compensability exam. Labor code 4061 describes the exam that's ordered when there's a dispute over only two things: the existence and extent of permanent impairment and or the need for future medical care. Those are the two issues ordered under labor code 4061. And then labor code 4062 is for all other non-medical treatment dispute issues. All other issues not related to medical treatment disputes. As we know, medical treatment disputes are no longer the purview of the qualified medical evaluator, but rather are the purview of independent medical review. Okay? Now, when you fill out this form online, there's a drop-down box that allows you to select the issues under labor code 4062 that are non-medical treatment disputed issues. And some of those are: number 1, ability to return to work; number 2, causation; number 3, temporary disability; number 4, permanent and stationary status; number 5 is disputes over work restrictions; number 6, disputes over apportionment; number 7 is disputes over diagnosis. Okay? So when you get the call for the qualified medical evaluation, you want to find out under which labor code is the evaluation being ordered. Now, is this a labor code 4060 evaluation? Is it a labor code 4061? Is it a labor code 4062 evaluation? Each of these evaluations are unique and distinct from each other, and they each handle completely different issues. Many qualified medical evaluators are going into the evaluation not knowing what it is that the disputed issues are, not knowing under which labor code the evaluation is being ordered, not knowing what the heck it is that they're supposed to be doing in the particular evaluation. So, for example, if the evaluation is being ordered under labor code 4060, the compensability exam, the main issue driving the evaluation is AOE-COE. Did the injury arise out of employment and occur in the course of employment, and therefore is the claims administrator liable for the injury? It's called the compensability evaluation. Now, you'll know that you're getting a compensability evaluation with a couple of clues. Number one, typically, although not in every single case, but typically, the date of injury is relatively close to the date of the evaluation. Usually those two dates fall within somewhere between 3 and 6 months of each other, 3 and 9 months. In other words, they're relatively close. The reason that those dates are relatively close is because typically these are the claims that are the denied claims. They're denied. That's why a compensability examination is required to determine if this is a claim that the claims administrator has to accept. Up until this point in time, the claims administrator has denied the claim. So those dates are usually relatively close. Another clue that you'll have that you're dealing with a Labor Code 4060 evaluation is there will be very few medical records. Very few medical records. Number one, because the dates are so close, the examinee hasn't had a whole lot of time to pursue medical treatment. And then number two, because the claim has been denied, medical providers within the medical provider network are not going to be providing care. This is an examinee whose only option is to seek treatment outside the medical provider network. And so if there are medical records, there will usually be scant medical records, scant or no medical records. So those are your two basic clues and cues that you're dealing with a Labor Code 4060 evaluation. Now, if you're dealing with a Labor Code 4060 evaluation, which is the compensability evaluation, what is the importance of discussing permanent impairment? Permanent impairment is not a disputed issue in a Labor Code 4060 evaluation. The purpose of a 4060 evaluation is to determine compensability. If you as the Qualified Medical Evaluator determine in your wisdom and your professional judgment that the injury qualifies as an industrial injury, what's going to happen next? Next, the examinee will then probably go through a reasonable period of medical treatment, after which he'll be declared permanent and stationary, after which he'll be given a permanent impairment rating if he qualifies for that, and all those other issues will then later be determined. But at the beginning, under the 4060 evaluation, you're not doing a permanent impairment evaluation. You don't need to do the range of motion measurements as they're described in the AMA guides. You don't need to do all the formal procedures for determining permanent impairment that are described in the AMA guides, because the issue is compensability. The issue is not permanent impairment. Now, similarly, under Labor Code 4061, those are evaluations that are ordered due to disputes over permanent impairment. Permanent impairment. The existence of permanent impairment and the extent of permanent impairment. So, for example, it could be a situation where the primary treating physician has provided a permanent impairment rating, and the examinee considers the permanent impairment rating to be too low, and the examinee declares a dispute, or the primary treating physician has provided a permanent impairment rating and the claims administrator is claiming that the permanent impairment rating is too high, and the claims administrator declares a dispute. Okay? So the dispute is over the existence and the extent of permanent impairment. It says on this form, under Labor Code 4061, it says a permanent impairment dispute. Okay, on the same form, this is for unrepresented, it says, what's the reason for the evaluation? Check the box, and here's the 3 boxes right over here. Here's the 3 boxes. The second box says, there's an objection to the primary treating physician's determination regarding permanent disability, or the need for future medical care. So, under Labor Code 4061, the whole driver of the evaluation is permanent impairment, which is completely different from the issues that drive the compensability exam under Labor Code 4060. So if you know that you're getting the evaluation under Labor Code 4061, why would you spend any time at all discussing AOE COE? It's not one of the issues in dispute. And particularly now in the current culture and the current climate, causation is a diminishing and dwindling complexity factor that only applies to denied cases. Well, the disputes under 4061 and disputes under 4062 are not denied cases. These are cases that have already been accepted. The examinee's gone through a period of medical treatment. The examinee has now been declared to be permanent and stationary, and the only dispute is on the existence and extent of permanent impairment. So for this evaluation, a significant portion of your face-to-face time is involved with obtaining the measurements, in obtaining the objective findings, measurements, angles, circumferences, important for determining permanent impairment from the AMA guides. Okay? The AMA guides have almost no relevance to the Labor Code 4060 compensability evaluation. So can you see how the face-to-face evaluation and the issues and the time distribution spent in the various activities in the face-to-face evaluation have to be redistributed based upon the type of evaluation that you're getting. So it's critical that you determine in advance the type of evaluation that you're getting. Okay, and then finally, under Labor Code 4062, for example, on QME Form 105 for unrepresented injured workers, it provides a third box for the party to check where it says that the work injury claim is accepted. The claim's been accepted, so AOE, COE, and causation is not a disputed issue. You need to spend no time in the face-to-face evaluation discussing how did the injury occur and who was there and was it a witnessed incident and then what happened and where'd you go for care and were you transported by ambulance and all of that stuff. It doesn't matter in the Labor Code 4062 evaluation because all of that compensability stuff is not a disputed issue. So it says the work injury claim is accepted for one or more body parts, but there is a dispute over additional body parts. On this particular form, under the Labor Code 4062 checkbox, it simply says a non-medical treatment dispute, which we talked about includes temporary disability, work restrictions, apportionment, and all that stuff. Okay? So I've provided for you in your handout materials copies here of the labor codes 4060, 4061, and 4062. You should read these and you should be familiar with these. These describe the QME panel process. Now it's interesting. It's interesting because I've found, and I've spoken on this many times, that of all the players in the workers' compensation system, such as the examinee, the QME, claims administrator, applicant attorney, defense attorney, judges, WCAB, all of these players in the workers' compensation system, very few of those players have any knowledge of the roles and duties and responsibilities of the other players. In other words, we know all about the procedures involved with doing qualified medical evaluation, but we have no idea what the applicant attorney and the defense attorneys go through in their day-to-day functioning as attorneys. We don't have a chance to go down to the WCAB and stand in front of the judge and file all these forms that they do as part of their duties. And I found that the parties have no knowledge of the duties and responsibilities of the other parties? Well, it's important that we have some basic understanding as qualified medical evaluators of the drivers of these evaluations. And the drivers of these evaluations are not us, it's the parties. And the parties determine the issues under which the evaluations are ordered. And there's only 3 issues under Labor Code 4060, 61, and 62. So if you know these issues in advance, you can streamline your evaluation to focus specifically on the issues. Okay? So that's the first thing I want to talk to you about. Preparing for your face-to-face evaluation is that it's critical that you scope out the type of evaluation that you're getting. Second thing is you need to review the materials that you receive from the parties to determine the complexity of the evaluation in advance. See, the doctor that called me up the other day and lamented that he had spent over 15 hours on an examination that he's only going to get $500 for, he has no one to blame but himself. And I know those are harsh words, but he went into that evaluation not knowing what the heck he was supposed to be doing during that evaluation, and that caused him to waste unnecessary time that could have been spent in 100 other better ways. So it's critical that you determine the complexity of your evaluation in advance. So let's talk a couple minutes about the complexity factors and the DWC's new interpretation of the complexity factors. Okay? So I have here 2 materials. I have a copy of the current regulation that governs the medical legal fee schedule. This is CCR 9795, and I took this right off the DWC's website. And then I have here, I have a copy of the same thing, but an antiquated version of CCR 9795 from 1993. And the purpose of bringing such an antiquated version from 1993 is to show you that basically, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, in my opinion, the Division of Workers' Compensation, in employing us as qualified medical evaluators, intends for us to be paid at approximately $250 per hour. What is my support for that opinion? Well, in looking at the medical legal fee schedule, we have several ML billing levels. The ML 101, which is the follow-up medical legal evaluation, that gets billed out at $250 per hour for all activities, including review of records, face-to-face time with the injured worker, and preparation of the report. All time involved with the evaluation from start to finish is paid at $250 per hour. It's in the law. The ML 104 gets paid at $250 per hour. There is some controversy now as to what activities get paid at $250 per hour, and it's the position of the Division of Workers' Compensation through their new interpretation of the complexity factors that time involved with report preparation is not reimbursed at all. Not only is it not reimbursed at $250 an hour, it's not reimbursed at all, but at least review of records, face-to-face time, medical research, those are activities that are billed at $250 per hour. The ML 105, the fees for medical legal testimony such as deposition, those are billed at $250 per hour. The ML 106, which is the fee for supplemental medical legal evaluation that involves face-to-face time, is billed. No, I'm sorry, this is supplemental reports. The ML 101 is the supplemental evaluation with face-to-face time. The ML 106 is billed at $250 per hour. Well, that leaves only the ML102 and the ML103. Well, the ML102 is billed at $625 per hour. The ML103 is billed at $937.50. I'm sorry, $625 flat rate for the ML102 and $937.50 flat rate for the ML103. Well, referring back to the 1993 edition of the medical legal fee schedule, there's some language in the law here that confirms the DWC's intention for us to be billed approximately $250 per hour. So it says here under the ML102, it says, physicians typically spend 150 minutes on these evaluations. It says it right here. Now there's a strike through that language because that language was subsequently struck and it does not appear in the current language of CCR 9795, but it was a part of the original language of the ML102. Well, 150 minutes is 2.5 hours. What's 625 divided by 2.5 hours? It's $250 per hour. The Division of Workers' Compensation intends us to be paid about $250 per hour. Under the ML103, it says, here I have it highlighted, physicians typically spend about 4 hours on these evaluations. In fact, 4 hours is required in order to qualify as an ML103. You need to have 4 or more hours on 2 of the complexity factors. So at $937.50, you can see that the ML103, the doctor's hourly rate is starting to dip below $250 per hour. It's approximately $230 per hour, okay? Approximately. So the hourly rate is dipping. Now, under an ML103, after you qualify with your 4 hours, any additional time spent after that, such as time spent preparing the report, is going to further reduce your doctor's hourly rate. And that is how the one doctor claimed to me that he was making only about $50 per hour doing the evaluation. So it's important that as much as possible, we preserve and protect and guard our hourly rate so that our ML102 evaluations typically can be concluded in about 2.5 hours, give or take, about 2.5, and so that the ML104 can be concluded in about 4 hours. Well, if that's to be the case, the face-to-face evaluation has to change. It has to change because we no longer have the luxury of being able to spend endless time discussing unrelated issues for which we're not getting paid. Okay? So, a little bit more about these complexity factors. See, some of these complexity factors under CCR 9795 do not contribute to additional payment to the doctor, according to the Division of Workers' Compensation's new interpretation of the complexity factors. Let me give you an example. Under the ML104, the Division of Workers' Compensation is now telling us that the only way that the doctor gets paid for his time involved in report preparation, which is reimbursed under the ML101 and under the ML106, there's no question that the doctor's time involved with preparing the report, the hours and hours and hours involved at the computer, preparing the report is reimbursed under the ML101, it's reimbursed under the ML106. The Division of Workers' Compensation is telling us now that the only way that the doctor's time for preparing the report gets reimbursed Under ML 104 is when there's a prior written agreement from the parties that the evaluation involves extraordinary circumstances. Now, I don't know about your experience in getting this prior written agreement. My experience is, and it's the experience that I'm accumulating from my subscribers, is that it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to get the parties to agree in advance of the evaluation that the evaluation involves extraordinary circumstances. Why would the parties take the time out of their busy day dealing with hundreds and hundreds of files to take 25 minutes to write you a letter that they agree that your upcoming evaluation involves extraordinary circumstances and therefore you get to bill for all your time involved with report preparation? Why would they do it? They won't do it. They have absolutely no incentive to do it. Why would they do it? It's nearly impossible. I say nearly because I have succeeded in getting a prior written agreement on a couple of occasions. Some of my subscribers are succeeding on random occasions in getting a prior written agreement. But in the main, doctors are failing to get a prior written agreement. So if you're not going to get paid for your time involved with report preparation, how much time can you spend preparing the report before your hourly rate dips to zero, dips down to what one doctor described as less than $50 per hour? Now let me put that in a little bit of context for you. I recently had two vendors provide services for me that put this hourly rate and put this QME evaluation into context for me. Number one, I recently had some service done at my house to drain my septic tank. I live in a mountainous area in California where we don't have public services. We have a septic tank. We have a septic system, and every several years, the septic tank needs to be emptied. Well, the fee for emptying the septic tank is $395. Well, don't you know, when the vendor came to my house, he found a need to do some digging and some excavating around the septic tank, which, of course, involved a separate charge. And the separate charge for him to dig around the septic tank was $115 per hour. Okay, $115. As qualified medical evaluators, we're seeing our hourly rate dip below $50 per hour. But here was a septic system cleaner guy charging $115 an hour for shoveling around the septic tank in order to create a larger orifice around the septic tank. Well, don't you know, in the course of doing that work, he found a need to bring another employee from the same company out to assist him in reconfiguring part of the septic system. So I had two employees out there at $115 per hour. Now, I doubt that either of those employees had a college degree. I'm certain neither of them had a doctorate degree. I'm certain neither of them had the extensive education that we as qualified medical evaluators have, and yet they're billing at $115 per hour. In another recent example, I took a couple of chains from my chainsaws down to the chainsaw shop to have the chains sharpened. Say that fast 3 times. So, guess what the shop rate for sharpening chainsaw chains is? It's $100 per hour. Do you think it requires a college degree? Do you think it requires a doctor degree to sharpen chainsaws? It does not. And yet, they're charging $100 per hour, whereas we as qualified medical evaluators, if we're not careful, if we don't prepare these evaluations correctly, can see our hourly rate dip to nothing, and hours and hours and hours be wasted for no reimbursement. So it's critical to know what you're getting going into the evaluation. It's critical that you establish the complexity of the evaluation in advance. Let me give you another example. It says that one of the complexity factors that helps to qualify your evaluation as an ML 104 is apportionment. And I know all of you are familiar with this. Let me just read the apportionment complexity factor to you. It says apportionment. Addressing the issue of apportionment. When determination of this issue requires the physician to evaluate the claimant's employment by 3 or more employers, 3 or more injuries to the same body system or body region, as delineated, etc., or 2 or more injuries involving 2 or more body regions. So apportionment is a complexity factor. Let's think about this. How are you going to report on apportionment within the body of your report? How are you going to do that? You do that by sitting down at your computer and typing in your thoughts, your findings, your opinions, your conclusions for time that you're not getting paid for under report preparation under the ML 104 unless you have a prior written agreement. Same with causation. How do you discuss causation within the body of your report? You discuss it by sitting at your computer and preparing it within the body of your report. We're no longer paid for doing that. So the face-to-face evaluation and the report preparation has to change. And in our upcoming sessions, we're going to go in to the specific changes that I'm going to ask you to make if you want to continue as a qualified medical evaluator. Now, I want to conclude today's discussion by letting you know that in bringing you these topics, the focus of these topics is not about the qualified medical evaluator's success, how to make money as a qualified medical evaluator, how to succeed as a qualified medical evaluator. The Division of Workers' Compensation frowns upon those types of topics discussed in continuing education programs. So this program is not about how to make money as a qualified medical evaluator. What it is about, it is about how to construct your qualified medical evaluation in a way that you can afford to continue to do it. Because at the current reimbursement rates, doctors are dropping off and are declaring themselves to be unavailable because it has no business efficacy to them to do the evaluations in the way that they've always done them. So the evaluations are being mandated to change. Changes in our evaluations are being mandated by the Division of Workers' Compensation by way of the new interpretation of the complexity factors. So you've got 2 choices. You can either continue as a qualified medical evaluator and adapt, or you can drop off and simply focus on your clinical practice or other ventures that are a better use of your time. Those are simply your 2 options. And if you decide to continue as a qualified medical evaluator, I want to share with you some ideas that would make that rewarding for you. Okay? So in our upcoming session, on our next session, we're going to talk about how to confirm the examinee's attendance at the evaluation so that they actually show up at the evaluation and so that the examinee is prepared for you, mentally prepared for what you're going to do with them at the evaluation. And we're going to talk about how to obtain the history and the relevant medical history, and that's coming up in our very next session. So for today, this is Dr. Perry Carpenter. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on today's discussion, and I look forward to being with you on our very next discussion as well. And I want you to know that I'm wishing you best of success in your career as a qualified medical evaluator.